Hello, friends. Welcome back to the Consumed by Grace podcast. We're your hosts. I'm Pastor Henry.
And I'm Pastor Brooke, and we are thrilled to be with you once again as we talk all about the social principles in the United Methodist Church.
Yeah, this is going to be a fun one. We're going to be talking about the last one of the social principles, the political community, and we're excited to have our friend, Reverend Diedrich Kauser, going to come drop a little wisdom on us in this one. Diedrich, just tell everybody, where are you serving and a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, I'm so grateful to be here with you all in this opportunity to share about the exciting things that are happening in our church and what God is calling us to do. But I'm Diedrich Kauser, grew up in a small town here in North Alabama, pretty much a product of the United Methodist Church. Mm-hmm. I'm actually sixth generation Methodist.
Wow.
Well, that's my parents still attend Methodist church that my great-great-grandparents are buried.
Fine.
So
that's cool.
Yeah. So now I'm serving at Trinity United Methodist in Huntsville, Alabama, and I've been there for a couple of years. So just down the road from here.
Yes, we actually have a lady that attends. She's a member of your church, but every once in a while she lives in Arab, so every once in a while she'll come and hang out with us.
Good deal.
I know, isn't that fun?
Mm-hmm. Good deal.
Yeah. All about the connection.
Yeah, all the things. And so we're talking about the political community, and as has been kind of the practice of the social principles in our book of discipline, it starts off with a quote from Wesley from something that touches on this, and this is from his sermon, The Circumcision of the Heart, and it says, "Love is the fulfilling of the law, the end of the commandment. Very excellent things are spoken of love. It is the essence, the spirit, the life of all virtue. It is not only the first and great command, but it is all the commandments in one. Whatsoever things are just, whatsoever things are pure, whatsoever things are amiable or honorable, if there be any virtue, if there be any praise, they are compromised in this one word. They are all compromised in this one word, love." And dare I say, I love that. But
how appropriate.
But because that there needs to be a basis when you come to talking about politics. Now, dare I say, we all grew up as good Southern folks, but in my particular version of Southern folks, you don't talk politics, period. And so I think one of the things when I think about this and learning how the basis to talk about it, one of the things I see is we never really learned to talk politics well, because you just didn't.
Yeah.
And now we don't know how to talk about things in a loving way. And I just see that as a big gap in our in so many of our abilities to do and wrestle with this well.
Yeah. And it's interesting too. I was a product of a household where you for sure didn't talk about politics, and you definitely didn't talk about money, and you definitely didn't talk about those things together. And so, now we live in this world, especially with social media being what it is now, where it seems like everybody's talking about politics, and not just politics, but their politics. And so it feels very almost heavy to talk about, but I do again love bringing the word love into it. I think that changes sort of the temperature of the room when you bring love to the table.
Yeah, I think when we think of Wesley and we think of the theology of Wesley and love as being central to our Christian faith, it's so important that we do have that foundation and we see that as a lens to what's happening in the world, what's happening in our lives, kind of as a guiding principle, right? As we begin to talk about the things that are happening in the world. I actually grew up in a house where we did talk politics.
All right.
And in a church where we also, there was no really dividing line. It was kind of a spiritual discipline to talk about those things because it affected our everyday lives. As we start to think about human rights, you start to think about things that affect our everyday lives. So there was really no divide. But I will say this, every context is different.
Yeah.
And I've learned that through the years. And I've learned that, especially serving in a Methodist church, every Methodist church is different.
Yeah.
And I appreciate hearing that, because I think that's true. It's for some of us, we grew up thinking that this doesn't affect our lives, and then I can at least speak for me, and I say at some point in time you realize, well, no, it does.
Yeah.
These small decisions that we make do have an effect, and so that vote we cast, our faith should have some kind of influence on it. And I think that we have done ourselves a disservice in the church when we have refused to talk about that, because then we don't know how to talk about it well. A lot of us, when we're filming this, came through stewardship season. And I see kind of the same thing with money. Because we as the church have not talked about money, people are learning from other places, this is how you should spend your money, this is the right way to do that. Is that biblical? Is that faithful to what God is calling us to be? Well, if we don't talk about it, how are people going to know?
Yeah. What do you think? This is the big question. Why do you think we're so afraid?
Yeah.
I mean, to talk about those things, or hesitant.
Yeah.
We won't say afraid.
Well, and we've talked about in one of our past episodes that we've recorded in this series about, giving dignity and love in having these intentional conversations. And I think we are aware, we have this heightened awareness around us that my opinion may be different than your opinion, may be different than your opinion, and how do we, but we, of course, our opinion is right.
It's correct.
Yeah.
Correct?
Yeah.
And so how do I talk to another person who may be thinking differently than I am in love when I know that I'm correct? Does that make sense? I think that's why it's hard to bring, but again, when we lose that love, when we lose that intentionality about how do we have hard conversations, we're called to do that. We've talked about that. We're called to have these hard conversations. How do we do that and make sure that that we're leading with love?
Yeah.
So that made me think, it's funny, until here lately, I don't know that I wouldn't have done this. It made me go to some of the Enneagram language. So if you've ever done the Enneagram, or if you're unfamiliar with the Enneagram, it's one of the many personality typing things. Helps you deal with how you process information, what you do when you're stressed, that kind of stuff. Some of it's very practical, some of it's very woo-woo. Your mileage may vary.
I love the word woo-woo.
So it can depend, but it made me think that, when it comes to politics, to answer your question, Deidre, when it comes to politics, a lot of people become like me as an Enneagram 9. Because a Enneagram 9, in that our focus is peace. And we want to maintain the peace around us. And there are healthy ways to do that, and there are unhealthy ways to do that. But whatever way I can do to remain peace, that's what I'm going to do. And so a lot of times, one of the things that can happen as a 9 is when you feel like conflict may arise, you avoid it. And so I think that's because I do think there's a little bit of fear around conflict. And then I also think there can be a little bit of fear around, well, if I learn something or if I talk about this, what if the way I'm doing things is not right? And there can be that sense of avoidance, because if you don't challenge the status quo, you won't know that there's a problem.
What do you think?
I agree with that. I also agree. I also think as preachers, as pastors, we often are kind of looked to have answers and to have exact certainty on everything. And in many ways, I think that's great, because we are kind of the local theologians in our context. But I think it's also important for us to say that we are still growing. We are still being transformed, because a part of being loving is also recognizing that we haven't arrived. We don't have all the answers. And I think if we were to be a little bit more vulnerable in those places that we have influence in, to give people permission to have those hard conversations, to agree to disagree, to say, I think I'm right, however, I also see your side of things.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think that gets well into one of the first quotes in the text of this section. It says, our involvement in political systems is rooted in the gospel imperative to love our neighbors, to do justice, and to care for the vulnerable. As United Methodists, we acknowledge that love requires responsible political action and engagement aimed at the betterment of society and the promotion of the common good. We acknowledge that such political engagement demands humility and mindfulness of our own complicity in perpetuating injustice. It also necessitates compassion, prayer, and a willingness to discern God's guidance. I appreciate that it puts humility, mindfulness, a willingness to discern, because as you say, that this should say we haven't got this all figured out. We don't have all the answers. Every time we meet a new person from a different context, or even a person in our context who has a very different experience, like, we have the opportunity to learn something, and that's got to be important of it. And again, I just appreciate that, the gospel imperative to love our neighbors. When we go to vote, like, love should be there. I'm legally obligated, especially when I preach, whenever something comes up with love, there's a million love songs out there. So I always find myself quoting. My favorite one to do is to bring in a little Tina Turner. What's love got to do?
That was the first thing that came to my mind.
Of course.
I love that y'all are on the same page about this.
And because I get to do that, but you also get to answer, what's love got to do with it? Well, everything.
Yeah.
It's the most critical part of everything we do. Now, how we are loving and what that looks like, that can take some wrestling with and figuring out what's the right way to do it, but it needs to be rooted and grounded in love.
That the whole idea of loving our neighbors. I mean, we all know that neighbor gets larger and larger. Everyone, that circle begins to draw wider. I think one of the things I realized even more after being a delegate to the General Conference was that the call that I had on my life in that time not only encompassed my own local context, but it encompassed the church in general. What is God calling us to do as a church in this time, in this place? But then what is God calling us to do in the world? So not only am I there to represent the North Alabama Conference in my context, but I'm there to represent the church, but also the world. So what is God calling us to do in this time, in this place, to be loving to our neighbors? And I think that phrase, the common good, I think we've kind of, we need to grow into that a little bit more in today's time.
Well, and I think because we do live in such a bubble, right? And we forget that we do live in a bubble, that it takes experiences like what you have done to go and to sit next to people who are not from your bubble, to be able to see what they're doing, not just even in the United States, but across the world, what's happening within the church across the world. And I think to have an experience like that is super amazing, to get to sort of realize that it's bigger than just me or you and just my local church, but it's a lot wider.
It is, and you can do things for you that you could say would be compassionate, and would be compassionate in your context, but what are the effects that has nationwide, worldwide? We are called to think about these things and to wrestle with these things, and that's why. I mean, I do think that can lead into sometimes while we just this is so big, this is so complicated. Now I'm out. Because I can't. But when we think about it, you can. There are things and ways you can do that do have an effect. But it is going to take some effort.
We can't do everything, but we can do one thing, two things, things that stir our hearts, things that we feel like God has called us to. It can seem overwhelming and monumental to try to want to do all of it and understand all of it and help in every way. we can't do that. We're human, right? There's no way we can do that. But if we can start with one thing.
Yeah. We all have our sphere of influence.
Sure.
Wherever we are in the world.
Yeah.
And using that to the glory of God. And being clear about what you're called to do. Because what I'm called to do may be different from what you're called to do, Brooke and Henry. How do we discern for ourselves what God is calling us to do in this moment?
Well, and that's that last part, right? We have to be willing to sit and meet people in compassion and prayer, and have this willingness to sit in silence and listen for what God's calling us to do too.
And that's, that should be, as we think about, what we do when we go to vote, when we, support particular candidates or whatnot. One of the things it says in there, it says, we call on all government officials to aspire to the highest standards of professionalism, honesty, and integrity. Furthermore, we urge all governments to adopt policies and practices that guarantee accountability and transparency in fostering and maintaining the trust of the public. That's part of it. Being willing to do our part to engage with them, and expecting our politicians to engage with us. One of the things that, dare I say, we've probably all done at some point in time, you write a letter to your congressman, to your senator, to a particular representative, and man, it makes such a difference when you get a real letter back and not just the standard form letter.
Yeah.
And I think when you do that, and when you have that expectation, it can change things, because that changes the conversation.
Yeah. Well, it puts a real person, in that seat, not just a, unreachable, untouchable figure that's, moving chess pieces as they wish, kind of a thing. Yes, Henry knows my stance on the form letter. I do not like getting a form letter response.
And I mean, it's something simple, and so I think about, again, going back to just recently stewardship thing. So that when we're filming this, we've just finished up the third quarter, which meant the way we do it here. I don't know how y'all, but we send out quarterly statements and thank you letters to people who give to the church. And one of the things I've seen more and more, like, people are saying, "Oh, just you turn that over to AI, and AI will write you a little letter, or you have the nice form letter, you sign it every time." And it's aggravating, and it's not one of my favorite things to do. But I'm going to write a real letter every time, because I think that matters, and that's part of our willingness to be transparent and honest. It's like, I'm going to say, hey, this is what's going on this quarter. This is how much we appreciate you. I'm not willing to farm that out.
Sure.
Yeah. I think what you're saying is the relationship is important. The gospel is relational. There's a relational part of the political system. And I think that probably gets lost sometimes in our modern world. The relationships that we're being, the opportunity that we have to build relationships with people who disagree with us, who are in agreement with us. I think seeing it as an opportunity to be in relationship is a powerful thing.
I agree. Well, and stories, I mean, I'm such a big fan of people sharing their stories. I think hearing people's stories is important to being able to have those relationships with one another. Nothing will change your mind faster than a testimony from somebody, right? And so, or at least, it maybe not change your mind, but at least bring an awareness.
You can establish a common ground. Like I might say, what about Breakfast at Tiffany's? And you would say, I think I remember that film.
Welcome to my life.
For those of y'all who don't know, that is an amazingly ridiculous one-hit wonder song from the 80s.
And I do actually love that song.
Your diversity of music is very interesting, by the way.
Thank you. I try. Y'all, and I don't know how well this would, if you're on the podcast listening to this, you might have heard something in her voice. For those of you, I hope you got to see just the look on good grief. What is he about to say now?
No, here's what it is. It's what did I say? What did I say to make him hear a song lyric that he could say for the 11th time?
Yeah. I recently shared a meme with a few friends that said, so do you constantly think of movie quotes and song lyrics to punctuate the conversation, or are you normal?
Right. That's a good question. There's something to be studied there.
But no, like finding common ground. It is so critical. And yes, I could think a song about here that would do this too. But like more often than not, we are really not that different. One of my favorite memories of this, and it was truly eye-opening for me personally, and it was I was probably 25. I should have had this earlier in life, but here we are. But I was having a conversation with one of my roommates in seminary about healthcare and about government healthcare versus private healthcare, and what's the best way to do that. And I remember the light bulb clicking for me, saying, we both want the same thing. We both want people to have access to effective, affordable health care. We just think about it in wildly different ways because of our experiences. But to me, that completely changed the conversation, and it takes it from an argument over who's right and who's wrong to, well, what can we take from each of us to make the whole thing better?
Yeah. Which is a very beautiful way of thinking of it, right? To know that we're moving on toward perfection, that we're not in any given, all these there are hot topics,
yes,
that people we take to the extreme, but nothing's exactly perfect. So how do we continue to mold and shape to where we're making a more perfect union?
Yeah.
Which is beautiful to think of. But when we see these social principles as an opportunity for growth, because I think an opportunity is that we realize that we're all going to be challenged by something here.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah, and there's things. One of the things it talks about, here significantly. I'm not going to read the whole thing, but I just love the first sentence. Christians have struggled with the issue of war since the time of Jesus. There's a lot to be written on this, and I don't want to spend a ton of time on talking about this, because that debating pacifism versus just war versus other things, that's a series in and of itself. Sure. But we all live in, either in Huntsville, in the shadow of Huntsville. We have a big military presence here in Huntsville at our churches. And there are people who work on Redstone Arsenal is the place where many of the contractors work. And they have wildly different opinions about that. And they still come to church here. And they need to hear a gospel message, and it needs to be informed with that. And it is a great skill to be able to be both challenged in what you hear, but then be able to offer constructive criticism about an opinion. And we as the church ought to make a safe place for that.
Yeah. Well, and I think that, again, goes back to having those intentional conversations. And they're going to be hard, right? Like, they're going to be a difficult conversation for some. Personally, for me, oftentimes, I don't want to engage in those conversations because I don't feel qualified. I don't feel like I have enough information in my hands to be able to have good conversations. But at the same time, wouldn't it be great to sit in on those conversations? Isn't that how we expose ourselves to the rest of the world, is to be a part of them, even if it's just active listening, right? Asking good questions. I'd be curious to know.
Was literally going there.
Do you remember
Were
that?
you at that event?
Okay.
So there was several years ago at one of the bishop convocation. I'm thinking there's another word. But it's leaving me.
Me
But
too.
where we go to Sumatanga and there's always they bring in a speaker and something like that.
Yeah, the gathering.
And so gathering of the orders. Thank you.
Gathering
I
of
could
the
not
orders,
think of
yes.
that. Saved my life. They had one where they were trying to introduce a style of conversation.
I remember that,
And
yeah.
and the question was, somebody would make a statement, and the one of the people was saying, I'd be curious to know, and they put a couple people who were not interested in helping that along.
It was actually more of a game for them.
Yes, and so it went off the rails very quickly.
Very quickly.
But yes, that kind of thing of like, someone makes a statement.
Yeah.
Tell me more about why you feel that way. And one of my early district superintendents, Dale Cohen, said, "This is your chance. Get curious. Find out more about that person, because the more you find out about them, you get perspective on why they feel that way. But then, what you might also do is develop that relationship that might give you the ability to say, I think a little bit differently, and here's why,
Yeah.
rather than just yelling into the void of."
Yeah. Yes.
It just made me think back at Trinity last summer. We tried to do this in the preaching moment. We did a sermon series called From Both Sides of the Table. And each of the preachers had to choose a preaching partner. It was a lay person. And we would facilitate this sermon, this sermonic moment where we were trying to preach from different perspectives. I found in that exercise, though, kind of back to what you were saying, Henry, is that we do have a lot in common. And I found in preparing for those sermons, I had to really sit there and think, well, what is our differing opinion right now?
Yes.
And it might be because we're in this little ecosystem of our own. Churches are kind of similar, more similar than they are different. But how can we facilitate those space to kind of give people permission to get curious? I think is important. How do we model that as pastors?
Well, and when we come to the table with grace and humility and love, it's a little bit easier to answer those questions. It's a little bit easier to share maybe where I'm going or where I'm coming from, or where why what my experience was or is, and I think it makes it a lot easier to have that conversation when we all can agree. And surely we can all agree that we should have these conversations from those places.
And trying to set up even just some baselines, like one line in here: we declare that all the individuals, no matter their circumstances or social standing, are entitled to basic human rights and freedoms. How do we have the conversation of, we want to hear everybody out, but we also want to say, but here's some of the non-negotiables too, because that needs to be a critical part of it.
Yeah, I was thinking Jesus turned over some tables.
He did.
He did.
He turned over some tables. He had some harsh words for people. Now he offered them grace and a chance at redemption, but he also was, pretty harsh with them. And so both of those things can be true. We just have to be careful. At least for me, because none of us are Jesus. I think firmness with humility, is that a good way to say that? Maybe how can you be firm on things but also be humble in the way you come across? Because I guess that's the other thing that I think maybe makes us shy a little bit away. There is a lot of arrogance when we come to discussing what we believe and whatnot. And
I think it goes back to the relationship piece. I think it becomes, the lack of better words, I think it becomes sin when we just cut off a relationship or the opportunity for reconciliation. Because at the end of the day, we're called to offer forgiveness and be humble, be compassionate. And I think we get into danger when we say, "Oh, I'm right, you're wrong. I'm going to cut this tie." Because even though Jesus might have had harsh words, I believe that Jesus was still forgiving and loving in the midst of that.
Yeah. You know, and it's funny because, you know, if you read the Gospels, you know, each one has their own particular focus, and their timelines adjust a little bit. But yeah, he had harsh words for Pharisees, and he's still going to eat lunch with them. Like he's still accepting their invitation to come to the table, as it were.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's funny as I think about this. Like, you know, you get ready to talk politics and your hands start getting sweaty. But even when you disagree, when there's a relationship there, you know, that can also be some of the most fun you can have, because it's the opportunity to share what you're passionate about with someone who you care about.
Yeah.
And that's something we shouldn't forget as we are in this conversation. Like, it really can give, if we're committed to doing it well, it really can be a way that gives life, and as you say, Diedrich, can bring some reconciliation.
Yeah, I think that's why I was so excited to get to do this series on the social principles, because all too often we kind of forget where we're, you know, what we're grounded in, and these social principles have kind of given us a reminder of that, a kind of a reminder of how can we come to the table, and maybe it is that we agree to disagree on some things. We probably are going to do that, even amongst us, right? In the United Methodist Church as a whole, but also in the body of Christ. But there is a way to continue to love one another through that, to remind one another that we're all God's children. And so, you know, I think that's why I was so excited to get to do a series on this, because it's not often that we take out our book of discipline and open it and read the social principles, you know.
And you know, that's a shame, and maybe not on us individually necessarily, but that's our fault as clergy. Like, you know, that should be something we encourage regularly, because there are good things to wrestle with. And, you know, I appreciate, you know, if you go back to the beginning of the social principles, you know, these are things to be wrestled with. This is not the final version of what our social principles are going to be. And truthfully, as long as there is a United Methodist Church and or some incarnation of it, there's never going to be a final copy.
Right.
Because the issues are never going to be the same. And there's always going to be room to grow, room to adjust, room to get better as we include more people and hear more experiences, and we try to go more towards being like Jesus.
I agree. Yeah, because I mean, I even think about, you know, artificial intelligence. That's going to turn into something one day, and I would imagine that we'll have something in our social principles that says, how do we care for one another and God's people, you know, in this
Skynet,
space.
if you're listening, like, we affirm you, and we appreciate what you bring to the table.
You know, I learned a term this weekend, and it was called the callback guy that stands on the sideline. The callback guy. Y'all ever heard this? The callback guy is the guy that stands behind the coach and calls him back. Oh, when he gets a little out of hand. Henry was just my callback guy.
So I think of it as the belt guy, like because like there's like Kirby Smart when he was coaching at Alabama, and then I think still some in Georgia. Like, there is an assistant whose only job is to grab him by the belt and yank him back to the sideline. But we do that sometimes. We get on the ledge.
Thank you for the callback guy. That's all I gotta say.
I think what this is reminding me of is the beauty of the connection that we have in the church, and that every ministry is contextual. The importance of asking wherever we are in our own personal individual lives, but also the churches that we serve, the communities that God is calling us to serve. What does love look like here? What does it look like to love my neighbor, to practice my faith in this context, in this season? And
I think it's the small acts that get us there. Like we said, we can want to do everything.
Yeah.
But it's those small little moments that we have every single day with the people here around us that kind of get us there.
The opportunity we have to say, what is love? Baby, don't hurt me.
I'm sorry, I apologize on behalf of everyone here.
Who does not love those old Night at the Roxbury skits?
I mean,
Those
I
were the
love it.
best.
You're right. Agree. I'm calling him back.
Nope, not even gonna say that. Moving on. Y'all, this does feel like a good place to
Yes.
start to land the plane. Do y'all have any just final thoughts or things you want to share as we think about, how do we as Christians participate faithfully in the political system?
Yeah, I think for me it's just remembering and reminding myself to come to the table in all of the ways, right? To come to the table with love and compassion, maybe to pause and to listen more, to see a human person across the table from me, and to lead with love.
Yeah. I think for me, I'm just thinking about my own calling is to always, as a pastor, to be a boundary crosser, to be that person that can go in between different communities of people to facilitate that we're constantly moving and trying to build bridges.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I like that. And I guess just a slightly different version of coming to, like, stay engaged. Like, this can be tough work, but if we're doing it in a loving way, even when we get frustrated, we see the people behind it. Several years ago, the Arbinger Institute wrote a book called The Anatomy of Peace. Do you remember when we had to read that conference-wide? And there was an example in that has forever stuck with me, because I am one of those, I can be an angry driver. And there are not, the cars in front of me are impediments to where I need to go. And it literally asks the question, what if they're not an impediment in your way? What if that's a person? And the issues we talk about, the people we debate about, even when you're yelling on social media, those aren't enemies, those are people. Those are someone who God loves, and that should affect our willingness to stay engaged with them.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Yep.
We all thank y'all so much. Deidre, thank you for being here. We really
Certainly,
appreciate you, my
Yep.
friend. Y'all, thank y'all for listening, for spending some time here with us on Consumed by Grace, which is available in quite a few places.
All the places that you get your podcasts, including Spotify, Apple Podcasts. You can even watch our beautiful faces on YouTube.
You can see the pained look that Brooke
Yes.
gets when she sees that glint in my eye
Yes.
of, oh, I got a chance.
It's entertainment for sure, if anything.
Yeah, don't forget to give us a like, drop us a comment if you have a question, or if you have maybe something you'd like us to engage with. And if you're really enjoying us, feel free to share this with someone who might get something out of what we've been talking about today.
Yep.
Y'all, this has been fun. Join us next week as we wrap up this series on the social principles.
All right, see you then.
Bye.
Bye.